In this video I did some time ago, I showed a technique to where you could close an open end of an object like this to where it's solid like this. When you might want to do that is working with Otto topology. It will create geometry on the inside of a thin object like this, as well as on the outside. That may not be what you want. Plus, it also struggles a lot of times with very thin objects. So having a solid object like this is always much better. There are other use cases, baking, and also just working with retopo meshes in general. Snapping sometimes can be a little bit problematic with very thin objects as opposed to solid objects. But the first technique I showed was using something like the 2D paint tool or a Voxel tool, and then a closed spline to trace where you wanted to create a cap, if you will. But in this case, we're just going to use a primitive to cap it and see if that might be something you prefer better. I also highly recommend working in voxel mode because anytime you merge objects together, it's always best to use voxel mode. So this object is the one that we're going to work with. I'll hide the other one, and I'm going to create a new blank layer. I'll give it a little bit of resolution. I'll hit the space bar and I'll choose the primitives tool. I could use something like a sphere, but in this case, let's go with a cylindrical patch. I'll choose transform lattice toggle. Doesn't have to be too precise. Just want to get it generally lined up to where it's going to intersect with the glove. I think that's about right. And now all I have to do is hit apply. I want to make sure add is the Boolean method. I can hit the enter key as well. I'll choose any other tool to step out of the primitives tool so that gizmo in that preview object is not in my way. Now we have our primitive object. I'm going to right click on that and I'll choose remove intersection. I'll click the little picker, although I could just choose the glove layer. I'll hide the glove layer and I can see that it trimmed out the area where it intersected the glove. However, when you're working with voxels, there is no current way to separate these objects. If you're working with a hide tool, you can have it separate what's hidden, but in this case, the best way to go about it is to simply switch to surface mode temporarily. In the geometry menu, we have an option called Objectify Separate, and it only works in surface mode as of this recording. Right, okay. I can see here that it's separated them into two separate volumes here. This is the one I want to discard, and I'll switch that to voxel mode. Hit OK. Now all I have to do is come over to the right hand side of this layer, hold down the shift key while dragging onto the original layer, and that's going to merge these two together. And shabam, there you go. That's closed at the top, but we still have a void on the inside. To close that void, I'm going to right click and choose fill voids. Okay, so that's a quick look at closing an open object with voxels in 3D Coat using a primitive to do so.